Wayne Parham of Police Magazine, and today I'm joined by Mike Willis, Law Enforcement National Training and Program Director for the U.S. Deputy Sheriff's Association. And Mike's going to address a pretty serious and interesting topic. That's how to watch the hands. So welcome, Mike.
Hey, Wayne, great to be here.
What can you tell us how to watch the hands? What tips?
You know, it's such an important thing to me in so many tactical aspects, but, you know, one of the classes that we provide nationwide is active shooter response. But in all situations, whether it's high-risk stops, whether it's really any kind of call, domestic, is watching people's hands is kind of the key to safety. That's what's going to hurt us as a general rule. You know, what's in those hands? Can we control them? Don't let them have their hands in their pockets. But, you know, in a situation where you're on an active event, you might have a large number of threats coming at you, unknowns, and the majority of them, maybe 99%, are benign. It's that looking for that threat in there, and that's by addressing hands. We got to watch those hands, control those hands when we do come across people that we're dealing with. Once again, keep the hands where you can see them, keep them up where you can see them. Some officers have them put their hands in their face. You know, just always keep the hands in a visual position, because that is what's going to do us harm. If we control those, we kind of control everything.
That brings up an interesting thought. When you talk about, say, you have active shooter, and even when you're evacuating people out, that's more complex, more of a cognitive overload on the officer versus when you just have one suspect on a traffic stop and you watch his hands. We're talking multiple people.
Yeah, in both situations, it's important. Obviously, it's much more difficult when you've got numerous people around, but we've got to try to control those hands. You know, we've had incidents, real active shooters, where the shooters actually left the weapon, slipped out in the crowd, but once again, that's understandable. Law enforcement is looking for that threat, and that's what we've got to address, and who's going to do harm. And, you know, it's one of those things, too, where something we always point out, you know, you could be coming in once again, where there's been shots fired, and you're coming across someone that's hiding under a desk, for example. Once again, get them, put their hands out where we can see them. That's going to be our threat. Even if they have a weapon on them, but if we can control their hands, put them in a position we can control those hands are important. Sometimes there's a big rush we see in training where people are trying to get the person out from under something. My problem with that is that makes them mobile. If we can keep them locked into a position where they're immobile, control their hands, maybe clear the room, put them out, proned out, where we can then cuff them and then assess, are they armed, are they the danger, or what. That could be a specific situation. Other situations, you're not going to have time to be cuffing everybody. There's too many. It's looking for that needle in the haystack, assessing where the threat is. So always controlling the hands. You know, and along with those lines, how we do that is not get tunnel vision. Weapons handling becomes huge when we're moving with our weapon in these situations, not being locked out in a position where we're seeing kind of down a tube. Our sights tend to suck us in. Maybe keep that weapon in a position, a combat-ready position, where we can see high, low, right, left, all areas, assess hands, and once again, if there is a threat, we can obviously engage that if needed. But once again, we've got to avoid that tunnel vision. Sometimes we get too locked on an area and we're missing things around us. And that's, you know, we got to try to slow down as much as we can, try to breathe, try to relax. But hands are always something that we really stress, because that is what's going to do us harm. If somebody wants to run, that's one thing, but those fingers engaging triggers or knives or sharps, whatever it is, that's what's going to be a danger to us.
How do you, are there any bad signs, precursors, when you don't see somebody's hand that kind of raise an alert?
You know, hands in pockets are always something that officers need to be aware of. And obviously, you know, in cold climates, that might be for a reason, but we've got to make sure they get those hands out where we can see them. Or if they have a reluctance to want to take their hands out, even body mechanics, you'll see where, you know, people might be kind of holding their hands at their waist, kind of leaning one way or the other. Kind of can be some precursors to Do they have something concealed on them they don't want you to find, whether that's a weapon, whether that's narcotics, whatever it could be. But you can definitely look for body mechanics and things that people don't, kind of natural body reactions where people are keeping their hands kind of in a position that doesn't seem normal. But if we get them out to their sides, up in the air, whatever it may be, control them, and we can justify that for safety reasons. Hey, we want to see your hands for your safety and ours. Communicate why you're doing this, and be a professional as we do it as well.
What about for that individual who may be resistant to showing their hands? I mean, I know sometimes you're suspect, sometimes bystander. How do you deal and how do you navigate all of that?
That's the big danger. I think the number one thing we've got to try to do there is keep our distance and cover. Distance and cover give us tactical options. If somebody's reluctant to show us those hands, if we can go back from a position of safety to try to convince them to do otherwise and not rush up there and rush to failure, and not go hands-on, we don't need to. And that's, like I said, that's the advantage of distance and cover. Unfortunately, situations sometimes don't give us a lot of cover, but anything we can utilize to keep some distance for decision making. If somebody turns around, they've got something in their hands and they turn around and they're 3 feet away from us, it's hard to tell, is it a weapon, is it a cell phone, what could it be? When we're 20 feet away behind a solid cover, gives us a lot more time to assess this. So always try to utilize that when available, that distance and cover.
What about on traffic stops and keeping eyes on the hands, driver, passenger, backseat? How do you pull all that off? Seems to be a lot that would be going on.
It's a lot to be going on. I think officers are it's fair for them to ask people to keep their hands where they can see them, and if they're not doing that, maybe it's a situation where we need to back off, call for other units, and reassess how we're doing this. Asking a person to keep their hands on the steering wheel or just keep their hands where they can visually see them, making sure they're not reaching into those glove boxes, those compartments, anywhere we can't see. I think it's fair. Lighting up the car with our flashlight or asking them to turn on a dome light where we can see hands is a great thing as well. I think you also need to utilize, when available, your backup officers. Maybe you can't see everything. You're watching up the front of the vehicle, but another officer on the other side of the car could be watching the people in the back and keep an eye on those hands. It kind of comes that teamwork approach, which we need to utilize when we have that advantage.
So what would be your single best tips you would give somebody on how to watch the hands in general, especially when we have a suspect threat type situation versus a bystander or somebody evacuating from an incident location?
I think the biggest tip that I can say is, if you're in a weapons out situation, is keeping that weapon in that comfortable position where you can assess everything. Do not get yourself tunnel vision. I think officers tend to sometimes punch out with that weapon. And once again, those sights, that barrel kind of sucks us in where we're seeing a little tube, but not get that tight little area, see the big picture, keep our distance. And so we can assess hands, see what's in them or if anything in them, and control them. But I think that's the key, is not locking ourselves into where we're not seeing all the things around us. Under stress, we tend to get tunnel vision. We got to learn how to relax and breathe, and a lot of that comes from training and just and doing these drills.
Okay. Anything else you have to add to it as we wrap up?
No, I think it's something that officers really need to be aware of. We get sometimes too caught up in little things, what we're going to say and everything, but we can control hands, make sure we see they're in a safe place. Then we can start assessing what order we're going to clear rooms, clear secondaries. All these things can be played out as needed. Every situation is different. But if we can control hands off the bat, that's safer for us, and it's safer for the people we're dealing with, so there's not any kind of miscommunication or misconceptions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Wayne. Great talking to you.
This video has been sponsored by Trigicon. Trigicon, you know the names, the ACOG, the RMR, the MRO. These are just a few of Trigicon's innovative products, always designed to be as durable and reliable as the heroes who carry them.